Good evening, wherever you are joining us from. My name is Patricia Roxanne Hammond, coming to you live from our studios at Kwabenya Point 1. This is NEWSBOARD. Let's take a look at the headlines in Ghana and around the world. Dr. Oponi's attempt to remove Justice Honyenuga from Cocoa Board case fails again. Hannah Tete appointed UN Special Envoy for Horn of Africa. Government urged to introduce policies to caution Ghanaians as fares go up on February 26. And EU lifts sanctions against Grace Mugabe. You can also watch us on Facebook, Instagram and YouTube at NewTVGH. And now to the details. The Supreme Court has dismissed yet another attempt by former Cocoa Board Chief Executive Dr. Stephen Kwabena Oponi to get trial judge Clemens Honyenuga justice of the Supreme Court off his case. Dr. Oponi filed a two-legged application at the Apex Court seeking to quash some decisions of the trial judge who is sitting as an additional High Court judge and to prohibit him from continuing as trial judge.
It will be recalled that an earlier attempt at axing Justice Honyenuga from the case through the Supreme Court was shot down at review, where the court said it did not see any real likelihood of bias demonstrated against Dr. Oponi. In court on Tuesday, lawyers for Dr. Oponi, led by Samuel Kujo, first attempted putting Justice Honyenuga into the witness box for cross-examination. Mr. Kujo told the court that on January 22, 2022, Justice Honyenuga filed his affidavits in opposition to the application, the facts of which were in serious dispute, and he needed to be cross-examined on same. Relying on case law, Mr. Kujo argued that a judge whose affidavit is on the record may also be cross-examined. The Attorney General, Godfred Yeboah Dame, however, opposed the application, arguing that there were no issues on the face of the affidavit which were not resolvable so as to warrant a cross-examination of the trial judge. Describing the application as without merit and needed to be rejected, Mr. Dame insisted that the general rule was for motions to be tried on the strength of their affidavits, and a cursory glance of the trial judge's affidavit only revealed his contention that he did not violate Dr. Oponi's rights.
The University Teachers Association of Ghana, UTAG, has urged government to make good on its promises as the association returns to the negotiation table. UTAG called off its almost 7-week-old strike after several appeals by government, the Education Committee of Parliament, student unions, Vice-Chancellors Ghana, as well as a ruling by an Accra High Court. After a National Executive Committee meeting, the association resolved to resume negotiations till March 4, 2022.
The NEC of UTAG held an emergency meeting on Monday, 21st February 2022 at the University for Professional Studies, Accra, to deliberate on the way forward regarding the withdrawal of teaching and related services on the various campuses of the public universities. Following this, members evaluated the entire strike action with a aim of reaping the full benefit of improving the conditions of service of its members. The NEC of UTAG also considered the impact of our industrial action on our students and appeals that came from student groups like NUCS, USAG, GRASAG, and also the general public, especially parents and respected eminent leaders, including former President J. Kufuor, Chancellor of University of Mines and Technology, Takwa, Sir Sam Jonah, Chancellor of the University of Cape Coast, and the National Security Minister, who came in on behalf of the President, and also the Parliamentary Select Committee on Education. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the meeting, the NEC of UTAG resolved to heed the pleas of the eminent leaders, the Parliamentary Select Committee on Education, and other stakeholders to temporarily suspend the strike action up to 4th March 2022 to engage with the employer. For this, we call on the government to take advantage of this window to help improve the salary and general working conditions of the university teacher. We also call on the government to see to the implementation of the several agreements that have been signed in recent times. We call on all members of UTAG also to rally behind leadership and remain calm and resolute at this important phase of our history. In many forums, the employer has agreed with stakeholders that there is the need to improve the conditions of service of the university teachers. Thus, we are cautiously optimistic that the government will do the needful to improve the working conditions of the university teacher. We know that the government has not fulfilled its part of the bargain in many signed agreements in the recent past. However, the involvement of the Parliamentary Select Committee on Education and other eminent persons, we expect the government to carry through its promises this time round. We will, however, not hesitate to resume the suspended strike action should government renege on its commitments at the end of the stipulated period of negotiation.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has announced the appointment of Ms. Hanasewa Tete of Ghana as a special envoy for the Horn of Africa. She succeeds Parfait Onanga Oyanga of Gabon, to whom the Secretary General reiterates his deep gratitude and appreciation for his dedicated service.
The UN, in a statement, said Ms. Tete brings to the position decades of experience at the national, regional, and international levels, including well-sharpened skills in building agreement among stakeholders, which will allow her to strengthen the partnership between the United Nations and countries in the Horn of Africa, as well as with the Intergovernmental Authority on Development in the area of peace and security. Since 2019, she served as the Special Representative of the Secretary General to the African Union and head of the United Nations Office to the African Union. Before that, she was the Director General of the United Nations Office at Nairobi. She also served as the Cabinet of the Government of Ghana as Minister for Foreign Affairs, during which time she was also a member of the National Security Council and the Armed Forces Council from 2013 to 2017.
Police in the Greater Accra region have touted an attempted robbery attack on a bullion van at the North Industrial area. The Ghana Police Service says the suspects are being pursued by an anti-robbery team. The service has asked the public to volunteer useful information that will lead to the arrest of the culprits.
This attack comes months after a police officer was shot and killed by armed robbers at Jamestown in Accra in a robbery attack on a bullion van last year. The Ghana Police Service had threatened to withdraw its services if the banks failed to provide them with the necessary logistics to protect its men. The incident thus triggered a number of reforms, including the provision of standard bulletproof vans for the carting of money, as well as police and military escorts.
The Ghana Police Service has reiterated calls for all financial institutions in the country to resort to the use of fit-for-purpose bullion vans for their cash-in-transit activities. The remarks were made after the police in the Greater Accra region touted an attempted robbery attack on a bullion van at the North Industrial area. The attack comes months after a police officer was shot and killed by armed robbers at Jamestown in Accra in a robbery attack on a bullion van last year.
The forceful intervention of a police officer who was on duty nearby foiled yesterday's attempted robbery on the bullion van at the industrial area in Accra. While the robbers were fleeing the scene, they fired indiscriminately into the crowd, leading to 3 people sustaining various degrees of injuries. They have been admitted to Kolebu Teaching Hospital for treatment. The Ghana Police Service, after last year's incident at Jamestown, threatened to withdraw its services if the financial institutions failed to provide them with the necessary logistics to protect their men. The incident thus triggered a number of reforms, including the provision of standard bulletproof vans for the carting of money, as well as police and military escorts. The Ghana Police Service says the suspects in yesterday's case are being pursued by anti-robbery teams. The service has meanwhile asked the public to volunteer useful information that will lead to the arrest of the culprits. It also assured the public that the perpetrators, when arrested, will face justice.
The first Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Mr. Joseph Osei-Owusu, has dismissed a private member's motion by the minority for Parliament to constitute a bipartisan committee to investigate the expenditure made by the government in relation to the COVID-19 pandemic.
We are demanding transparency and accountability in the utilization of COVID resources. And we simply are telling the Ghanaian public that neither the Minister for Finance nor ministers responsible for sectors, including the Health Minister, have adequately accounted for the expenditure of COVID resources. I refer to $2.5 billion Ghana cedis announced in the 2022 budget as expenditure over the 2021 period. That has not been accounted for anywhere in any budget or in any expenditure. During the budget hearing, you heard the Minister of Foreign Affairs say that Minister of Finance spent 65 million on my behalf. The Minister of Finance is not a procurement entity for the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So how were those expenditures committed? By what procurement procedures to guarantee value for money? Even when the Honorable Deputy Minister for Finance, the Honorable Abena Osasari, attempted to explain, she could not account for the 65 million. She ended at some 21 to 30 million. It is for this reason that we moved a motion, because as you are aware, very respected civil society groups, Send Ghana and Ghana Integrity Initiative today, have launched damning reports into COVID expenditure. So what they have done is to say that don't shine the light on the darkness of corruption. Very disappointing for our country. The precedent that is being set, Parliament tomorrow may not be able to appoint any committee to probe any underhand or unsatisfactory dealing or performance of sector ministers. Is this the government Ghanaians voted for that cannot uphold itself to the values of probity and accountability?
And on to business, Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia has blamed the sharp and frequent rise in inflation on increment in price of petroleum products on the international market. Ghana's inflation rate as of Tuesday stood at 13.9%, the highest the country has recorded in 6 years.
Speaking at the National Energy Transition Dialogue, Mr. Bawumia explained that though a positive step, the global movement to cut back on fossil fuel in a bid to meet the net zero emission level is already taking a toll on the global economy as funding for oil exploration and exploitation shrinks. Its ripple effect, according to the Vice President, is responsible for the sharp and persistent rise in inflation. Mr. Bawumia made the call when he addressed the opening ceremony for a National Energy Transition Forum organized by the Ministry of Energy in collaboration with the Ministries of Transport, Finance and Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation in Accra.
Head of the Economics Division at the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research at the University of Ghana, Professor Peter Cortes says stakeholders should expect the upcoming 15% increase in transport fares as announced by the road transport operators to increase national inflation in the coming months.
The new fares, which are expected to take effect from Saturday, February 26, 2022, will include fares for shared taxis, intercity vehicles, both short and long distances. The increment, according to the road transport operators, is in line with the administrative arrangement on public transport fares and comes after intense negotiations with stakeholders and in consideration of the plight of drivers, commuters, and the general public. The expected increase in fares is, however, not expected to stay within the transport space, as an increase in transport fares ultimately impacts other aspects of national life, including the cost of food transported from food-growing areas, among others, which ultimately impacts national inflation, which currently stands at 13.9%. Professor Cortes noted that rising inflation is being experienced across the world, but charged government to introduce policies to cushion Ghanaians. Quote, "The point is that with the rising cost of living and fuel prices, drivers will certainly ask for an increment in fares. If you, however, look at the non-food basket of inflation, transport accounts for about 10.1%. That tells you that it will slightly affect other things like food and other things, but it won't lead to a major shakeup in the national inflation rate. It will lead to some inflation, but it shouldn't be major." Professor Cortes further expressed hope that the impact of transport fares increase through inflation will be dampened with an increase in food production.
Tala Oil has signed a memorandum of understanding with Forestry Commission of Ghana to identify and develop carbon offset projects that will support both the realization of Talo's 2030 net zero plans and the government of Ghana's nationally determined contributions under the Paris Agreement.
Following the signing of the MOU, the two organizations will collaborate to develop projects which will enhance the conservation of existing forest and increase forest stocks in line with Ghana's REDD Plus strategy. This active collaboration will not only help build a low-carbon future, but will create alternative economic opportunities for communities within the identified project zone. In addition to the company's commitment to decarbonize operational assets and eliminate flaring by 2025, the identified carbon offset project will form part of Tala's strategy to attain net zero on its Scope 1 and 2 emissions by 2030. The carbon offset will compensate for the residual, hard-abated emission. Deputy Managing Director of Tala Ghana, Cynthia Lumar, said, quote, "The partnership with the Forestry Commission of Ghana to co-develop carbon offset project is beneficial to both parties and is evidence of demonstrable resolve between private sector and government, united to address climate change while supporting sustainable delivery of energy for development." According to her, the benefits to local communities will be at the forefront of project to be developed to ensure that, quote, "we continue to create alter livelihoods aligned with our shared prosperity agenda."
The High Court in Accra has dismissed an appeal by mining firm Pursues Ghana Limited against a $10.2 million tax liability that is set to owe to the Ghana Revenue Authority. The GRA discovered the tax arrears during a tax assessment that was conducted by its Commissioner General, Reverend Dr. Amishadai Owusu-Amoah, on the operation of the mining company, but the outcome of the assessment was contested by the company at the Accra High Court.
In a ruling, the court held that the appeal filed by Perseus was unsuccessful because the company failed to demonstrate that the Commissioner General erred in applying the tax laws regarding the tax assessment. Quote, "From the foregoing, it is clear to me that Perseus Ghana Limited has not been able to discharge this burden, that the assumptions of facts made by the Commissioner General and the interpretation and/or application of the tax laws by the Commissioner General leading to the objection decision were inaccurate and/or wrongly applied to make the decision wrong in law."
We'll be right back with more news after this break. Welcome back, and on to some international news. President Vladimir Putin has insisted that Russia's interests and security are non-negotiable amid reports of more Russian troops moving closer towards Ukraine's border. Mr. Putin gave a video address hours after U.S. President Joe Biden warned of the beginning of a Russian invasion.
Russia was always, quote, "open for direct and honest dialogue," but he had full confidence in the military. The West has announced a range of sanctions on Russian interests. Quote, "We've cut off Russia's government from Western financing," Mr. Biden said, after Russia's upper house of parliament authorized the president to send troops into two parts of eastern Ukraine controlled by Russian-backed separatists. Mr. Putin declared on Monday night that Russia had recognized the independence of the so-called People's Republics of Luhansk and Donetsk, tearing up a peace accord with Ukraine. Ukraine's foreign ministry urged all citizens to leave Russia, warning that the escalating Russia aggression against Ukraine could limit consular assistance. The military in Kyiv also announced it was immediately calling up all reservists aged 18 to 60, both officers and privates, for a maximum of a year.
The Zimbabwean government has welcomed the decision of the European Union to lift travel and financial sanctions imposed on Vice President Constantino Chiwenga, former First Lady Grace Mugabe, and Military Chief Valero Zibanda. The EU took the decision despite acknowledging that Zimbabwe's human rights record had not improved and could worsen.
The sanctions were first imposed on the four 20 years ago, but were suspended 2 years ago. They have now been completely removed. Sanctions against Zimbabwe's defense industry remain in place. Zimbabwean government spokesman Nick Mingwana told the BBC that the decision was a positive signal and reflected incremental gains for re-engagement with the EU. The government would continue pushing for all sanctions to be removed unconditionally, he added. President Emerson Mnangagwa has been trying to improve relations with Western nations since ousting long-serving ruler Robert Mugabe in 2017.
Hong Kong's government has ordered the compulsory testing of all of its 7.5 million citizens as the city battles surging coronavirus infections. Chief Executive Carrie Lam said residents would have to undergo 3 rounds of tests starting in mid-March.
The territory is trying to adhere to China's zero-COVID policy, but the highly contagious Omicron variant has overwhelmed its hospitals and testing and quarantine facilities. While other parts of the world are learning to live with the disease, China's policy is to try to eradicate infection through early testing, detailed contact and tracing, and strict quarantine and travel restrictions. All residents will have to undergo 3 rounds of PCR testing at intervals of about a week. Ms. Lam did not set a date for testing to start, but said capacity would be increased to 1 million daily tests. In between compulsory tests, residents will be required to conduct daily rapid antigen testing. Experts have warned that huge numbers of population could be in isolation within weeks. Entire cities have been locked down in China, but such a move was not being considered in Hong Kong because it was, quote, not realistic, Mrs. Lam said.
And on to some sports stories. The Ghana League Clubs Association has confirmed that the 2022 edition of the annual President's Cup will be a repetition of the Super Clash, with Hearts of Oak and Asante Kotoko going head-to-head. The game is scheduled for Friday, March 4 at the Accra Sports Stadium in what will be another battle between the 2 most successful clubs in Ghana football history.
The 2 clubs recently faced each other in an outstanding game of the 2021-2022 Ghana Premier League season, with both teams failing to break the deadlock. According to the statement from Gauka, the president, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, is expected to do the ceremonial kickoff. Gauka's chairman, Kojo Fiano, explained the rationale behind choosing Kotoko and Hearts for the game. Quote, "We play these matches to raise funds for the association to execute our programs, and in honoring the president, you need a fixture that can pull the crowd," he said. Again, getting this thing together at this very short notice was not easy. And as we are all aware, we haven't had this for the past 3 years. So now the argument of why Hearts and Kotoko shouldn't come in.
And on to entertainment. Afrobeat sensation Wizkid is excited to have landed his first collaborative work with fellow Nigerian colleague Asa. Wizkid was featured on track 3, IGD, of Asa's upcoming album 5.
The Grammy-winning act took to his Twitter account to announce the collaboration in simple tweet. "Asha X Bid Wiz," he wrote. Asha quoted his tweet with an eagle and love emoji. Wizkid expressed interest in working with Asha in 2015. He had praised her work and noted that she was the only artist he was eager to work with. 7 years later, the Essence hitmaker has landed his first collaboration with Asha's 5th album. Meanwhile, Wizkid and Asha are not the only people excited about their collaboration.
And that's it for NEWSBOARD. Let's take a look again at our headlines. Dr. Oponi's attempt to remove Justice Honyanuga from Cocoa Board case fails again. Hannah Tete appointed UN Special Envoy for Horn of Africa. Government urged to introduce policies to caution Ghanaians as fares go up on February 26. And EU lifts sanctions against Grace Mugabe. Thanks for watching. My name is Patricia Roxton Hammond. We came to you live from our studios at Kwabenya Point 1. Good evening.